I'm here with writer, director, producer extraordinaire Kevin Booth. Now, Kevin, I know you've been involved with a lot of different projects in the past. What are some of the projects that really stick out for you? The fondest memories that you have, the things that you're proudest of?
I guess when my band first got a record contract back in the 80s, we signed a deal with Chrysalis Records. The name of the band was Year Zero. And, you know, of course, those are great memories. I mean, because, you know, I was, you know, I was 25 years old, and we got a $500,000 record deal.
Wow.
80s, we were doing tons of cocaine, picking us up in limousines. I mean,
party life.
We had some fun. We had fun. It lasted for a couple of years.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a fond memory, and then when that fell apart, inevitably, you know, I have a lot of fond memories. Obviously, working with Bill Hicks. That, you know, went on for several years, and then, you know, fond memories of working with Alex Jones, and some bad memories, but mostly fun. He's a real, he can drive you crazy, as most people could probably imagine.
Yeah.
And, you know, great memories of working on American Drug War. And the marijuana thing, you know, it's been trying. It's one of the interesting things is that I did this film, How Weed Won the West, and everybody's like, aren't you sick of the pot movement? Aren't you sick of the pot movement? And I really was sick of the pot movement, but then I got to the point of like going, God, I can finally. It took me making a crappy marijuana film to go, now I can see the film that needs to be made. And it took me going through that experience to also gain not only the trust of everybody, but also get all the contacts that I made. So.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
So, you mentioned that you got the new movie in the works. What's going to be the focus of it? How's it going to be different, really, than the ones that you've done in the past, Weed One and American Drug War?
Well, I guess we're going to find out. I mean,
yeah.
you know, I mean,
not to give too much away.
But we're trying to just pick this thing up. I mean, I'm not going to go back and give a big history lesson about the drug war. And you know, I felt like American Drug War was an overview of the entire drug war, the history of the drug war, and all.
Summed it up really good in 2 hours.
Yeah, trying to like sum up the whole thing. It was, believe me, the first edit was like 5 hours long.
I bet.
A lot of refining and boiling down to get it down to 2 hours. It was brutal. And I'm not going to make this like a big pro-marijuana documentary. This is going to be just more about how the government is systematically, you know, demonized this plant and is basically, you know, is really like hurt us as a society on so many different levels. But about how it's not too late to like turn that around and pull it out, you know, with all this fascinating new research. But also really putting a professional white-collar look on the whole deal.
Yeah.
And really wanting people in the Bible Belt to be able to see this and go, you know, yeah, this is something that I want.
I'm going to go home and talk to my grandma tonight and tell her that there's a way that you can take marijuana that doesn't get you high and that it's good for you and essentially a vegetable. I'm gonna hit her with that line the next time I see her. So. No,
I mean, and it really does, because the first time I drank weed juice, you know, I was scared because I was like way out in the middle of one of those grows, and you know, I had like a 4-hour drive ahead of me, like, you know, LA freeways and shit, and I can't, you know, I can't get high. I can't get real high and drive all those LA freeways. It's too dangerous. You know, I don't want to.
Yeah.
And you know, he's like, no. So I drank the weed juice, and it was just like, it was like drinking wheatgrass. I'm not gonna lie to you. It doesn't taste great. It's like, it's got a little bit of a bit to it, but you know, it doesn't get you high though.
But it gives you a lot of the positive effects besides.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of like a body high, a little bit of energy, but it doesn't get you stoned. You know, it's kind of hard to believe, but it's true.
Yeah, we need to do away with that lazy stoner image anyway. We got Cy Young winning potheads and a gold medal winning potheads over here. You know, it's silly to think that nobody can do anything when they're smoking pot.
Well, yeah, not only that, but you know, all the old anti-drug war or all the anti-drug commercials where they used to show like the guy who smokes marijuana like still living on his parents' sofa. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, of course.
It's like he never did anything in his life. Well, the funny thing is that those are all my friends back in Austin who smoked the Mexican dirt weed.
Yeah.
You know, which ironically, when you go to California and you're smoking like the expensive kind bud and all these things, you know, my friends are doctors and lawyers, actors, producers, right? These are all people that make millions of dollars a year, live in $1 million homes, drive $100,000 cars. They are not lazy.
Right. Talking about the PSAs, do you think people would view those PSAs differently if they know what you knew, that they're funded by big pharma, big tobacco, and big alcohol?
Yeah, no, you know, Right. I thought one of the most startling things was to find out that Exxon is even behind that, and the big oil companies. And of course, you start seeing the health insurance companies are behind this. And it really starts to make sense when you tie all this, that Blue Cross, who I've been paying money into my whole friggin' life, is tied together with Exxon, and it's just like, ugh. And before they realized that, the tobacco and alcohol companies used to be the ones directly behind these anti-drug things, but it was too obvious, and so they had to get they stopped accepting the donations from the alcohol and tobacco companies, and so because that was just like too in your face. But it's there if you look up the history.
Yeah. So shouldn't we as a country be a little bit more worried about the war that's about to maybe spill over our border and that's causing all this violence, as opposed to these wars halfway around the world? We've got this huge problem in Mexico that is essentially funded by our drug habit. I mean, America uses, what, 50% of the world's cocaine a year?
Only 30% of the chiclets. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I have no idea what's going on in Iraq or any of that. I mean, it's insane. I mean, I'm not like going to sit here like Alex Jones telling I know everything about 9/11 and all that, but I figure we should have the ability now as a country to just take out the perpetrators and leave the country building to other people. We need to be building our own country. Allow the Mexicans a way to get in here, like my great-great-grandparents had to. They had to go through an immigration process. They had to become citizens. Why is that different now? I mean, everybody should be allowed to come to America, but you shouldn't just be allowed to just spill over the border and then suddenly get insurance.
Right.
And drive a car. That's not fair to us that had to go through all this shit to get here and pay all these taxes. So.
Right. And you've got politicians like Ron Paul who's made statements like that if we were able to reduce illegal immigration, that we would be able to actually open the door to legal immigration.
Yeah,
that we'd be able to let far more people in legally through those methods, as opposed to it just being a free-for-all. And a lot of people, from my understanding of things, are getting killed coming up. They get involved in cartel business or get involved running drugs up as a way to get to America, and they end up dead. It's easier for the cartels just to put one in their head than to pay them what they owe them or whatever.
And it's just always still hard for me to believe that there isn't some sort of, conspiracy going on that with the DEA or like in the upper ranks or parts of our government that does allow the cartels to be doing what they're doing on purpose. If you look at even what's going on in Afghanistan now, it replicates what was going on in Vietnam with shipping heroin around, with the whole Ricky Ross story in Iran-Contra. There's plenty of first-hand documented cases now of heroin being shipped over from Afghanistan via the war on terror. And all the cargo planes going back and forth. And how can you not? I mean, you give like a bunch of broke guys like access to these giant cargo planes going back and forth into countries where there's just shitloads of cheap drugs, and they fly back into like this heavily guarded country where those drugs become worth millions of dollars. It's inevitable going to happen. And so as long as the profit motives are there, as long as corruption is just a hard thing to get rid of, as long as the profit motive. So really the only way to put an end to all the corruption is to take the profit motive out. It's the only way.
I agree. I would look at the decriminalization model, and I hope that things work out for Portugal and that people begin to see that. That's one of my big hopes. So what do you think is one of the biggest obstacles in America to that? Do you think it's the ingrained, the tradition, the closed-mindedness that's sort of bred into us? Or do you think it's more of the media and the propaganda that really gets us?
Well, I think those things are two hand in hand with each other. I mean, the media and the propaganda are part of, so it just, when I think, my mom and dad are gone now, but I think it's like, God, my dad, just I guess because he was raised in this post-World War II setting where